The jungle was too quiet. No birds, no wind, no sound. Only the slow crackle of leaves under Jake's boots. Jake Walker, a human explorer from Earth, had been on this alien planet for 3 days. His ship had crashed far from base, and now he had to walk through this glowing, dangerous jungle to find help. The plants were tall and strange, with blue vines and red flowers that moved slowly, like they were breathing. Some trees had eyes, others made soft humming sounds. Jake didn't trust any of them. He kept his rifle ready, eyes scanning the thick mist that covered the forest floor. Then he heard it, a scream. It wasn't a normal scream. It was high and sharp, like glass breaking in the air. Jake froze. It wasn't human, but it wasn't an animal either. It sounded desperate, afraid. Another scream, louder this time. Jake turned toward it and ran. Branches cut his face, vines grabbed at his arms, but he didn't stop. He pushed through thick leaves and entered a clearing, and what he saw made him stop cold. Giant flowers stood in the center 20 feet tall, with green and purple petals shaped like blades. Its thick stem pulsed like a living heart, and inside its open mouth was a girl. An alien girl. She was halfway inside the plant, her silver blue skin glowing under the sun. Her arms fought against the slippery red walls, but she was sinking. Jake didn't think. He charged, shouting, firing his rifle at the plant. The bullets hit the stem and dark green blood sprayed out. The plant screamed in awful, deep sound like metal tearing. It jerked but didn't let go. The girl slipped deeper, only her arms and head above the red jaws now. Jake dropped his rifle, grabbed a thick vine, and wrapped it around the plant's stem. He pulled hard. The plant hissed and writhed, petals slashing the air. Jake ducked. Just in time, a petal slicing through a tree behind him like butter. He jumped, grabbed the girl's hand and pulled. "Hold on," he shouted. Her eyes opened bright, glowing violet, and locked on his. She was scared, shaking, but she nodded. Jake pulled harder, feet digging into the mud. The plant roared again, lifting her into the air. Jake's feet left the ground. They were both in the air now, hanging by her slippery hand. Jake used his other hand to grab her arm and yanked. The plant shrieked, its petals spinning wildly. Then, with one final pull, she popped free. They both crashed to the ground hard. Covered in green slime and gasping, the plant writhed in pain and slowly collapsed. Melting into the ground, Jake rolled over, panting. The girl lay beside him, weak and silent. He turned his head and looked at her. She was beautiful, strange and beautiful. Her skin shimmered like water, and her hair floated softly, even though there was no wind. He reached out carefully and touched her neck. She was alive, but barely. Jake sat up and scanned the jungle. No other creatures, no more screaming plants for now. He picked her up gently and started walking back to his camp. She was light but limp in his arms. He didn't know who she was or why she was here, but he had saved her, and he had a feeling. This was just the beginning. As he disappeared into the trees, a pair of glowing green eyes opened in the vines above. The jungle wasn't done yet, not even close. The night was cold, but she was burning up. Jake had wrapped her in a silver blanket and placed her beside the small fire. The alien girl trembled like she was freezing, though sweat ran down her glowing face. He had cleaned the slime off her body as best as he could, trying not to touch too much skin. She looked peaceful now, but he knew she was still in danger. That plant had nearly digested her, and she needed medical help. Jake didn't sleep. He sat beside her, rifle in his lap, watching the dark trees shift in the wind. The jungle made no sound, but he could feel something watching them. Just before dawn, she gasped. Her body jerked like electricity ran through her. Jake turned quickly and leaned over. Hey, you're okay now, you're safe," he whispered. Her violet eyes opened slowly, blinking in confusion. She tried to speak, but her mouth was dry. Jake gave her a few drops of water. She sipped it, then coughed softly. "You saved me," she said in a soft, strange voice. Jake nodded. "Yeah, barely." She looked around. her gaze sharp and alert despite her weak body. "This place is not your home," she said. "Nope, I crash-landed," Jake replied. "Looks like you're not from around here either." She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly sat up and touched the burned part of her leg. Jake noticed small glowing symbols begin to appear on her skin. They weren't tattoos, they moved like they were alive, pulsing with soft light. "What are those?" he asked. She looked at him carefully. "You really don't know who I am?" Jake frowned. "Should I?" She took a deep breath and said, "My name is Soraya Valin of House Tyrol." Jake blinked. "Okay, that's supposed to mean something?" Soraya stared at him, clearly surprised. "I am the first daughter of the council, heir to the throne of the Liari Dominion." Jake rubbed his face. "Right, and I'm Jake Walker from Earth, pilot of a beat-up cargo ship. Nice to meet you." She didn't smile. "You don't understand, this jungle, this planet is a forbidden zone. I was not supposed to be here. Nobody is." Jake looked into the trees. "Yeah, I'm starting to see why." Soraya's eyes narrowed. "The jungle has minds beneath it. Old ones, hungry ones. We call it the maw. It swallows everything, even memories." Jake didn't like the sound of that. He suddenly felt like saving her might have pulled him into something bigger before he could respond. Soraya touched the ground with her palm. The dirt glowed beneath her hand, forming symbols in a perfect circle. Jake stepped back, watching with wide eyes. A small map formed in the dirt, glowing lines showing rivers, trees, and something deep in the center, a dark spiral. "That's where we have to go," she whispered. "Go?" Jake asked. "Why?" "We should be getting out of here." "No," she said firmly. "They took something from me, something powerful. If it stays in their roots, the jungle will spread. Not just here, but to other worlds." Jake stared at the glowing spiral. He had come here just to survive, maybe get rescued, but now he was in the middle of something ancient, and the only one who could guide him was the girl he pulled from death. In the distance, the jungle began to hum, not loud, but steady like drums beneath the ground. Jake checked his rifle and sighed. "Of course it can't just be a simple rescue." Soraya stood up, still weak but strong in her posture. She looked at him and said, "You're the only one who touched the root and lived. That means you're marked. The maw knows you now." Jake laughed dryly. "Lucky me." And then the jungle began to move again. This time, it was coming for both of them. Asterisk. The ground was breathing. Jake didn't notice it at first, just a slow rising and falling under his boots. But as they walked deeper into the jungle, the movement became stronger. It was like the earth itself was alive, pulsing with something ancient and waiting. Soraya walked ahead, her long white cloak stained from the jungle's touch. She didn't speak much, but her glowing eyes scanned everything. The strange marks on her arms were brighter now, moving in patterns Jake couldn't understand. They had been walking for 2 hours, following the glowing map she had burned into. The dirt back at camp. The deeper they went, the quieter the jungle became. Even the leaves stopped rustling. Jake felt it in his bones. Something was wrong. And then he smelled it, burnt wood and something sweet, like fruit gone bad. He raised his rifle. "Wait," he said softly. Soraya froze, then nodded. She could feel it too. They crouched behind a moss-covered rock and peeked through the twisted vines. The clearing ahead was blackened, the trees around it dead and scorched. And in the center stood something massive. It looked like a tree, but its bark was red and, quote, wet, and its branches twitched like fingers. Dozens of alien bodies lay scattered around it. Not human, not Soraya's people either, something else, furry. 4 armed creatures with armor and weapons now broken and melted. Jake's heart pounded. He scanned the bodies, and then his eyes landed on one that was still breathing. It was trying to crawl away from the tree, one arm missing, the other dragging itself across the dirt. Without thinking, Jake stepped out, rifle raised. The creature looked up at him, eyes wide with terror. It tried to speak, but only blood came out. Soraya came up beside Jake, eyes cold. "He's one of the unrooted," she whispered. "Scavengers, mercenaries. They search forbidden worlds. For profit, if he's here, they were sent." Jake looked at her. "Sent by who?" Soraya hesitated. "My people," before Jake could react. The red tree snapped its branches toward the dying creature. In a blink, the branch stretched like a whip, grabbed him by the leg, and yanked him back. He screamed as the bark opened like a mouth and swallowed him whole. Jake fired, but the bullets bounced off the wet bark. Soraya grabbed his arm. "Don't waste ammo. It's not alive like you think. It's something else." The ground under them began to crack. Roots shot out, wrapping around Jake's leg. He slashed with his knife and cut free. Soraya grabbed his hand, pulling him back as the roots chased them like snakes. They ran through the trees, branches slashing at their faces, vines trying to hold them back. The jungle roared now, not just with sound but with anger. It knew them, and it wanted them gone. They didn't stop running until they reached a dark cave covered by a waterfall. Inside, the sound of the jungle faded. Only the soft drip of water remained. Jake collapsed, gasping for breath. What was that thing? Soraya sat beside him, her hand shaking slightly. It was a guardian, a bloodroot sentinel. They protect the Maw's heart. Jake wiped sweat from his face. "So we're heading straight for that heart, huh?" Soraya nodded slowly. "If we don't, the Maw will grow strong enough to reach space. It will consume ships, stations, planets, slowly but surely." Jake leaned back, staring at the glowing ceiling of the cave. He had only wanted to survive. Now he was part of a war between plant gods and star empires, and he wasn't even getting paid. Behind them, the roots slithered at the cave's mouth, waiting, learning, hungrier than ever. This was not just a rescue mission anymore. This was something much older, much deeper, and the jungle had only just begun to wake. Jake woke to silence. The cave was still, the waterfall outside glowing faintly in the early morning light. Soraya sat cross-legged near the entrance, her eyes closed, her fingers tracing symbols in the air. The light from her markings danced across the cave walls, forming patterns Jake couldn't read. He rubbed his eyes and sat up slowly. "How long was I out?" 3 hours, she said without turning. "You needed rest, and the Maw needed time to stop searching." Jake looked at her. "The Maw," he muttered. "You keep saying it like it's a person." Soraya opened her eyes and looked at him. "It is, in a way, not a person, but a mind. It remembers, it feels, and it hates anything that walks freely." Jake stood and stretched, muscles sore from running. He checked his rifle and pack. Then he noticed something strange, a dim light. At the far end of the cave, not daylight, something blue and pulsing. He moved toward it, curiosity taking over. Soraya stood quickly. "Don't touch anything." But Jake had already stepped inside a hidden chamber. What he saw made him stop cold. The room was round and smooth, not natural. It was metal, old and rusted, but clearly not part of the cave. In the center stood a tall pedestal, and floating above it was a glowing crystal cube. It rotated slowly, casting symbols across the walls. Jake stepped closer, drawn to it. It pulsed once. Softly, Soraya ran to his side, breathing fast. "This is it," she said, voice shaking. "This is precursor tech." "Precursor?" Jake asked. She nodded, eyes wide. "Ancient builders, long before my people or yours. They made weapons, engines, whole planets. This cube. This is a key." Jake raised a brow. "Key to what?" Soraya didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached toward the cube. But the moment her fingers got close, it flashed red and pushed her back with a pulse of energy. She cried out and fell to the floor. Jake ran to help. "You okay?" She nodded weakly. "It won't let me touch it. It knows I'm not human." Jake looked at the cube, then slowly raised his hand. The moment his skin got close, it glowed white. A soft tone echoed through the room, low and beautiful. Then the cube split open like a flower, and inside was a small silver disc with strange grooves. Jake carefully picked it up. It was warm, vibrating gently in his palm. Soraya's voice was barely a whisper. "That disc can open the Maw's central mind. Or destroy it." Jake looked at her. "Why me?" "Because only humans can access precursor systems," she said. "They were your ancestors too. Or maybe something even older." The cave shook suddenly. Dust falling from the ceiling. The jungle had found them. Soraya grabbed his arm. "We have to go now." As they ran from the chamber, vines slammed into the entrance. Jake pulled Soraya. Behind a broken wall of metal, outside, they could hear voices growling. Metallic, not human. The unrooted were back, but this time they weren't alone. Something much bigger walked with them. Jake peeked out and saw it, a beast made of roots and bones. Its face a twisted mask of bark. It was sniffing the air, searching. Soraya whispered, "They've awakened one of the hallowed guardians of the Maw, lost long ago. It won't stop. Not until we're both dead." Jake checked his rifle, half a mag left. Then he looked at the disc glowing in his hand. "We need to find that central mind," he said. "End this before the jungle spreads beyond this world." Soraya nodded. "And you're the only one who can do it." Jake smiled faintly. "Yeah, lucky me again." Above them, the jungle roared, louder than before. The final path had opened, and now there was no going back. Asterisk, asterisk. They reached the canyon at sunset. Red light spilled across the sharp black rocks, casting long shadows that moved like they were alive. Jake stood at the edge, staring down into the dark pit below. "This is the border," Soraya said, her voice tense. "Once we cross, we enter the Maw's core zone. Nothing that goes in ever comes out." Jake tightened the strap on his pack and checked the silver disc still glowing faintly in his hand. "Then we'll be the first," he said with a dry grin. But before they could move forward, the air shimmered. A low hum vibrated through the ground, and out of the mist came figures. Tall, armored, glowing with white energy. Soraya stepped in front of Jake quickly. "Don't move, they're mine." The figures formed a wall across the path, weapons drawn but not aimed. One of them stepped forward, removing his helmet. His face was hard, eyes sharp, his voice cold. "Soraya Valin, you were ordered to stay off this world." Soraya stood tall. "This world took something from me. Commander, I intend to take it back." The man's eyes shifted to Jake. "And the human? Why is he armed? Why is he carrying a precursor artifact?" Jake raised a hand. "Hi, I'm the guy who pulled your princess out of a man-eating plant." "You're welcome." The commander did not smile. "You don't belong here, human. This is Liari territory, and this mission is now under our control." Soraya's expression changed. "No, it isn't. He's the only one who can activate the artifact. Without him, you're just walking into death." A murmur moved through the other soldiers. The commander frowned. "You trust him? A stranger?" Soraya looked at Jake. "He's already risked his life twice to save mine. I trust him more than I trust politics." Jake lowered his hand slowly. "Look, I don't want your throne, your crown, or your war. I just want to stop that jungle before it swallows everything." The commander stepped closer. "You don't understand what lies beneath that canyon, human. It's not just roots and monsters. It's memory. The Maw remembers everything. If it touches your mind, you may never be the same." Jake held up the disc. "Then let's make sure it never gets the chance." The air grew heavy, the silence thicker. Then, with a stiff nod, the commander stepped aside. "You may pass," he said, "but we will not follow if you fail." "We burn the canyon, all of it." Soraya looked at Jake. "We won't fail." Together, they moved past the soldiers and stood at the canyon's edge. A narrow path spiraled down into the darkness. Far below, a faint red glow pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Jake took a deep breath. "Let's finish this." As they descended, the jungle above fell silent, but deep below, something began to stir. Not angry, not afraid, just waiting, because the Maw remembered the taste of fear, and now it was ready to feed again. Asterisk, the deeper they went, the louder the silence became. It wasn't just quiet, it was hollow, like sound had been eaten from the air. Jake could hear his own breath too clearly, and even his footsteps felt wrong. The spiral path ended at a stone gate covered in roots. Soraya placed her hand against the rough surface, and the roots pulled back like they recognized her. The gate creaked open, revealing a wide chamber lit by red veins glowing in the walls. At the center stood a black tree with no leaves. Its branches twisted upward like claws, and hanging above it, suspended by roots, was something massive, a pulsating brain. It was alive, wet, and twitching. The Maw's mind. Jake stepped forward slowly, holding the silver disc. It's huge, he whispered. Soraya stayed close, eyes narrowed. This is where it all began. Where the Maw was born. If we destroy this, the jungle dies. Jake nodded, raised the disc, and the air shimmered again. But before he could insert it, the roots slammed down from above. He was thrown back across the chamber, crashing into the wall. Soraya screamed his name, but vines wrapped around her, lifting her into the air. The Maw was awake, and it was angry. Jake struggled to his feet, blood dripping from his lip. The disc was still in his hand, glowing brighter now. The brain above let out a low, growling hum that shook the entire chamber. From the shadows came shapes, monsters, half plant, half machine. Creatures grown from root and bone, their eyes glowing green. Jake raised his rifle and fired, each shot bursting into vines and twisted metal. But for every one he dropped, two more crawled out of the walls. Soraya fought in midair, her markings flaring like fire. She cut through roots with glowing blades of light, but they kept coming, pulling her closer to the Maw's mind. The disc vibrated in Jake's hand, growing hotter. Then it spoke. Insert and sacrifice. Jake blinked. Sacrifice what? The disc pulsed again. Insert and choose. More monsters charged, but Jake rolled between them, jumped over a root, and ran toward the black tree. A vine lashed at his leg, slicing through his armor. He stumbled, but didn't fall. He leaped onto the platform at the tree's base, raised the disc, and slammed it into a hidden socket. The room exploded with light. The Maw screamed. Every wall shook as roots tore from the ceiling, and the ground split open. A voice filled Jake's head, not words, but emotions. Rage, hunger, pain, memory. It showed him visions, thousands of years of death, of roots stretching across stars, of Soraya's people burning the jungle, of humans leaving dead worlds behind. The Maw hated them all, but it feared him. Jake had a choice. Release energy that would destroy the brain instantly, killing everything in the canyon including Soraya, or seal it, trap it in a loop forever, but link it to his own mind. He would survive. But the Maw would live in him, always watching, always whispering. He looked at Soraya, still fighting, bleeding, glowing with defiance. He made his choice. He whispered, "Link it to me." The disc flashed, the room froze, every creature dropped, every root stopped moving. Soraya fell gently to the ground, coughing. Jake collapsed to one knee, gripping his head. The voice inside him quieted, but didn't vanish. She ran to him. What happened? Jake looked at her, his eyes darker than before. "I made a deal," he said quietly. "It's not dead. But it's in me now." Soraya touched his face. "You shouldn't have." He smiled weakly. "I'm human. We do stupid things for the right reasons." Above them, the brain cracked slowly, not destroyed, but tamed for now. And behind them, the jungle let out a long, tired breath, as if it had been holding it for 1,000 years. They climbed out of the canyon as the sun rose over the jungle. The light was golden, soft, and strange, like the planet itself was waking up from a nightmare. But Jake was quiet. He hadn't spoken much since he linked with the Maw. His eyes were still his, but deeper now, as if part of him stood somewhere else, listening to something no one else could hear. Soraya walked beside him, one hand ready to catch him if he stumbled. He hadn't stumbled, not once, but she stayed close anyway. When they reached the surface, the Liari soldiers were waiting, weapons raised. Their commander stepped forward, eyes narrowing at the sight of Jake. "What did you do?" he asked. Jake looked him in the eye. "I stopped it," he said. "It's quiet now." Soraya stepped in between them. He linked with the Maw's core. It lives, but it's chained to him. It cannot spread not unless he allows it. The commander didn't lower his weapon. "You brought the infection into your own mind? Are you insane?" Jake gave a tired smile. "Probably. They took him to their ship anyway, not as a prisoner, but not quite as a guest." Jake stayed in the medical bay while their scientists scanned him, tested him, questioned him. None of their machines could explain what he had become. His brainwaves were still human, but something echoed behind them, a pattern too old, too vast, too green. At night, he heard whispers in the walls, not voices exactly, memories. The Maw had touched 1,000 civilizations before it ever reached this world, and now it showed them to Jake. One by one, Soraya visited often. Sometimes she brought him tea from her homeworld. Sometimes she brought silence, which he liked even more. On the 7th day, she sat across from him and asked, "What will you do now?" Jake stared out the window at the stars. "They offered to send me back to Earth," he said. "But I don't think I'm the same man who crashed here." Soraya nodded. "No, you're not." He looked at her. "What about you? Go back to your palace and pretend this never happened." She smiled slightly. "I don't think I can do that either. The Maw is still a threat. It may be chained, but it remembers every planet, every path. And now so do you." Jake stood, walked to the window, and placed a hand on the glass. He could feel the roots behind it, sleeping, not in the ground anymore, but in him. Then he turned to her. "Maybe we should find the other seeds." Soraya raised an eyebrow. "There are others?" Jake nodded slowly. "I see them in my dreams, old worlds, overgrown moons, silent tombs of green and bone. They're calling to me now." Soraya stood too. "Then we go together," Jake smiled. "You sure you want to run around the stars with a guy who has a jungle god in his head?" She stepped closer. "I think I already did." Outside, the stars shifted as their ship turned. A new course set, a new hunt beginning. Because the Maw wasn't dead, and Jake Walker wasn't just human anymore. He was the one thing the Maw feared. A mind that couldn't break, a man who remembered everything, and still chose to fight, ***.